It might come as a surprise, but some of your favorite motorcycles are a nightmare for dealerships because no one wants to buy them. The thing is, people are very specific with their choices, and if a bike doesn't appeal to a larger crowd, it ends up collecting dust in a showroom. Today, we'll be looking at 15 motorcycle models for seniors that dealers are struggling to sell. Brace yourself, because you might find your favorite bike on this list. 15. Harley-Davidson Softail Deluxe. Wide white wall tires, swept fenders, and chrome everywhere. And for a while, it was a favorite among senior riders who wanted a smooth, comfortable ride with old school looks. But lately, dealers have been struggling to move them. The problem isn't that it's a bad bike, far from it. The Softail Deluxe comes with a 1,745cc Milwaukee 8 engine that delivers a deep, rumbling exhaust note. Exactly what Harley riders love. It's got that laid-back cruiser stance that's easy on the knees and lower back, making it a great choice for older riders who don't want anything too aggressive. But here's the catch. A lot of those same riders are looking for something with more modern tech. Harley itself has been shifting its focus toward touring models with big infotainment screens and advanced rider aids. As a result, dealerships are finding these bikes sitting on showroom floors longer than expected. And with Harley discontinuing the Deluxe a few years back, those that are still lingering around are getting tougher and tougher to sell. 14. Suzuki Boulevard C50. Here's a bike that used to be a go-to for older riders who wanted a mid-sized cruiser without the Harley price tag. The Boulevard C50 had an 805 V-twin that wasn't going to win any races, but it had plenty of low-end torque and a super comfortable riding position. It was a great option for anyone looking for a smooth, relaxed ride without dealing with a massive touring bike. But here's where things went sideways. While Suzuki kept the C50 around for years, they didn't really update it much. The styling stayed pretty much the same, and while that classic look appealed to a certain crowd, most riders weren't biting. Meanwhile, senior riders who once flocked to this bike have either moved on to bigger touring bikes or switched to more modern cruisers with better technology. Another big issue? The competition. Bikes like the Honda Shadow Aero and Yamaha V-Star 950 offered similar specs but with a bit more refinement. And now, with the cruiser market leaning towards either high-tech tours or stripped-down bobbers, the Boulevard C50 has been left in an awkward spot. Too big to be a beginner bike, but too basic to compete with newer models. 13. Yamaha Star Venture. The Star Venture had all the makings of a great luxury touring bike. Yamaha didn't hold back with this one. 1,854cc of V-twin power, a massive fairing packed with electronics, and a seat that looked like it belonged in a high-end recliner. It was built specifically for long-haul comfort, which should have made it a hit with senior riders looking for a comfortable, easygoing ride. But here's the thing. Touring bikes are a tough sell if they don't have the right badge. When people think of luxury tourers, they think of two names, Harley-Davidson and Honda. The Goldwing has been the king of this category for decades, and Harley's Road Glide Ultra has a cult following. That left the Star Venture in an awkward position. Yamaha tried to make it stand out by going all in on V-twin torque and classic American styling. But that put it in direct competition with Harley-Davidson's heavyweight tourers. And at a starting price of around $25,000, a lot of buyers figured they might as well go with the more recognizable brand. As a result, sales didn't take off the way Yamaha had hoped. Even though it's an objectively great bike for senior riders who want comfort and power, it just never caught on the way Yamaha wanted. 12. Honda Goldwing F6B. For a while, the Goldwing F6B was Honda's attempt to make their legendary touring bike a little more stripped down and stylish. They took the standard Goldwing, removed the massive trunk, blacked out some chrome, and gave it a sleeker bagger-style look. It was a move aimed at riders who wanted the comfort of a Goldwing without the full-dress touring vibe. And while it did have a loyal following, it never really took off like Honda hoped. The problem? most Goldwing buyers wanted all the luxury. Senior riders looking for comfort typically go all in, and the F6B, while still comfortable, lacked some of the features that made the Goldwing a legend, like the full audio system and premium storage. Then, Honda updated the actual Goldwing in 2018, making it lighter, more modern, and more stylish, pretty much fixing the issues that made the F6B necessary in the first place. That sealed the deal. The F6B was quietly discontinued, and the remaining one sat in showrooms, struggling to find buyers. 11. Royal Enfield Classic 500. There was a time when the Royal Enfield Classic 500 was the bike for riders who wanted something old school. It had that World War II era styling, a torquey single-cylinder engine, and just enough charm to make up for its quirks. For senior riders who grew up with old British bikes, the Classic 500 was a nostalgia trip on two wheels. But nostalgia can only carry a bike so far. The Classic 500 wasn't exactly built for performance. It was slow, vibey, and lacked the modern refinements that make other cruisers and touring bikes more comfortable. And then there's emissions regulations. Royal Enfield had to discontinue the 500cc engine in many markets, replacing it with a more refined and fuel-efficient Meteor 350 and Classic 350, both of which still have that retro look but run smoother and cost less. That left the Classic 500 in limbo, with the remaining stock just sitting at dealerships, struggling to find buyers who still wanted the rough around the edges experience. 10. Indian Scout 60. Indian Scout lineup is solid, no doubt about that. The regular Scout has been a favorite among cruiser fans, with its liquid-cooled V-twin and smooth ride. But the Scout 60, the smaller 999cc version, hasn't been getting the same love. On paper, it seemed like a great idea. By dropping the displacement slightly and offering it at a lower price, Indian hoped to pull in newer and older riders alike. But here's the issue. Senior riders looking for a comfortable cruiser don't usually go for the entry-level model. The full-size Scout is already approachable, and for just a little more money, it offers more power and better features. So most buyers looking for a senior-friendly cruiser just skip over the Scout 60 and go straight for the regular Scout. Meanwhile, newer riders, who Indian thought would flock to the Scout 60, often opt for something even cheaper and lighter, like the Honda Rebel 1100 or Yamaha Bolt. And dealers have been feeling the pinch. With the full-size Scout stealing the spotlight, the Scout 60 has been a tough sell. Indian hasn't officially discontinued it yet, but if sales don't pick up, it might just fade quietly away. 9. Harley-Davidson Road King. The Road King has been a staple in Harley's lineup for decades. It's got that classic bagger look, a massive Milwaukee 8 V-twin, and enough comfort to chew through miles effortlessly. For senior riders, it's always been an easy choice, a big stable touring bike without the bulk of a full dresser like the Ultra Limited. But lately, it's been a harder sell. Why? The market is shifting. Riders who want a touring Harley are now leaning toward models like the Road Glide or Street Glide, both of which come with full fairings and modern infotainment systems. Meanwhile, senior riders who still prefer a more stripped-down tourer are looking at lighter alternatives like the Heritage Classic or even adventure bikes with more comfort and better handling. And then there's the price. A new Road King sits at around $22,000, but at that point, a lot of buyers figure they might as well go for a full-dress touring bike or just grab a used model for way less. As a result, dealerships are watching Road King sit for months without moving, even though it's still an excellent bike for long-haul comfort. 8. BMW K1600 Grand America. BMW's K1600 series is a beast of a touring platform. With the 1649cc inline 6, it's one of the smoothest and most powerful touring bikes out there. The Grand America variant was BMW's answer to the Goldwing, low-slung, packed with luxury features, and built for serious miles. Naturally, it should have been a top choice for senior riders who wanted comfort and performance. But in reality, it just didn't take off the way BMW hoped. The biggest issue was simple: Goldwing dominance. Honda's flagship tourer had already perfected the formula, and while the K1600 Grand America offered more power, it lacked the reputation, dealer network, and brand loyalty that kept the Goldwing at the top. There's also the price. The Grand America starts at $28,000, which is a lot for a bike that doesn't carry the same prestige as a Harley or a Goldwing. Sure, it's packed with tech, electronic suspension, adaptive headlights, and all that, but it turns out that most senior touring riders care more about comfort and reliability than horsepower and high-tech features. 7. Kawasaki Vulcan 1700 Vaquero. Kawasaki might not be the first name that comes to mind for heavyweight cruisers, but the Vulcan 1700 Vaquero was their attempt to go toe-to-toe with Harley-Davidson baggers. It's got a 1700cc V-twin, big saddlebags, and a sleek batwing fairing that gives it a road glide style look. And for a while, it was a great budget alternative to Harley's touring lineup. So why are dealers struggling to move them? Well, the problem is simple. Harley and Indian have the market locked down. Senior riders looking for a long-haul cruiser tend to stick with the big names, and despite Kawasaki making a solid bike, the Vaquero never managed to shake its reputation as the cheaper alternative. Another issue is Kawasaki's lack of updates. While Harley and Indian keep refining their bagger models, the Vaquero has been basically the same bike for years. It's comfortable, sure, but it lacks the modern tech that riders expect in 2025. Now, Kawasaki seems to be quietly phasing it out, and the remaining stock is just sitting at dealerships. Even with discounts, it's tough to sell a bike that most senior riders don't even have on their radar. 6. Triumph Rocket 3 GT. The Triumph Rocket 3 GT is an absolute monster of a cruiser. With a 2500cc 3-cylinder engine, it holds the title of the largest displacement production motorcycle on the market. It's got more torque than most cars, a surprisingly comfortable setup for long rides, and enough road presence to make even the biggest Harley look small. But here's the issue, it's just too much bike for most people. While it's undeniably smooth and stable on the highway, that massive engine and nearly 700-pound weight make it a handful at lower speeds. A lot of senior riders prefer cruisers and touring bikes with low-end torque and relaxed handling, not something that feels like a muscle bike on steroids. Then there's the price. At around $24,000, the Rocket 3 GT sits in the same territory as luxury touring bikes. And while it does have creative comforts like heated grips and a comfortable seat, it doesn't offer the full dress touring experience that riders expect for that kind of money. 5. Moto Guzzi California 1400 Touring. The Moto Guzzi California 1400 had everything going for it. A unique Italian take on the classic American cruiser, a powerful 1380cc V-twin, and a design that mixed old-school charm with modern touring features. It had the comfort senior riders love, along with a bit of European flair that set it apart from the usual Harley and Indian options. But here's the problem. Nobody thinks of Moto Guzzi when they're looking for a touring bike. Senior riders looking for a long-distance cruiser tend to go straight to Harley, Honda, BMW, or Indian. Even though the California 1400 is a solid bike, it's always been a hard sell simply because the brand doesn't have the same recognition in the touring world. Another issue? Moto Guzzi hasn't updated it in years. The California 1400 has remained mostly unchanged, making it feel outdated compared to newer bikes. And then there's the dealer network. Moto Guzzi simply doesn't have the widespread support that Harley and Honda offer, which makes maintenance and parts availability a hassle for some buyers. 4. Honda CTX 1300. Honda has a history of making some incredibly practical bikes, and the CTX 1300 was supposed to be their take on a modern lightweight touring cruiser. It had a 1261cc V4 engine, futuristic styling, and a more compact frame than traditional full-size touring bikes. On paper, it looked like the perfect option for senior riders who wanted something lighter than a Goldwing but still comfortable for long rides. So, what went wrong? Well, it never found its audience. The CTX 1300 was stuck in a weird in-between category. Too big for casual riders, but too stripped down for hardcore tourers. It lacked the full luxury features of a Goldwing, but it was still heavier and pricier than mid-size cruisers like the Shadow or Boulevard C50. That left senior riders unsure of what to make of it. It wasn't quite a cruiser, but it also wasn't a full-on touring bike. And then there was the styling. Honda went with an ultra-modern, almost robotic look, which didn't sit well with traditional cruiser fans. Unlike the timeless appeal of Harley and Indian's designs, the CTX 1300 looked like something from a sci-fi movie, and that turned off a lot of senior riders who preferred classic familiar styling. Sales were so sluggish that Honda pulled the plug on the CTX 1300 after just a few years. Today, any remaining stock is just collecting dust at dealerships, struggling to find anyone willing to bet on it. 3. Suzuki Boulevard C90T. The Suzuki Boulevard C90T is one of those cruisers that seems like it should sell well. Classic styling, a 1462cc V-twin, hard saddlebags, and a touring windscreen, all at a price that undercuts most of the competition. But here's the issue. Suzuki has let this bike sit unchanged for way too long. While Harley, Indian, and even Kawasaki have continued to refine their big touring cruisers, the C90T has been running the same formula for over a decade with minimal updates. That tech feels old. The ride isn't as refined as newer competition, and the overall package just doesn't stand out in today's market. Even though the C90T is a decent cruiser, it doesn't carry the same prestige or reputation for long-haul reliability as some of its competitors. That means dealerships are finding it harder and harder to convince buyers to choose a Boulevard over the more well-known alternatives. At this point, the Boulevard C90T feels like an afterthought in Suzuki's lineup. If it doesn't get a serious refresh soon, it might just disappear completely, right after dealers finally figure out how to move the remaining stock off their floors. 2. Victory Vision. If there was ever a bike that was ahead of its time but just didn't click with buyers, it was the Victory Vision. With its futuristic design, 1731cc V-twin engine, and ultra-smooth ride, it was built to compete with the Honda and Harley's touring models. And in many ways, it succeeded. It was comfortable, powerful, and packed with features. But the problem is that Victory as a brand is gone. Polaris shut it down in 2017 to focus entirely on Indian, leaving Victory owners in a tough spot. That alone made the Vision a hard sell, but even before Victory's demise, this bike was struggling. The styling was a big factor. The Vision's radical, swooping bodywork was a bit too bold for the typical touring crowd. Senior riders who often prefer a mix of comfort and traditional styling didn't know what to make of it. Some loved it, but many just went for a Harley or Honda instead. Now, with Victory out of the picture, dealerships that still have a Vision in stock are desperate to move them. Parts availability isn't terrible thanks to Polaris still offering some support, but most riders aren't willing to take a chance on a discontinued brand. 1. Yamaha VMAX. The Yamaha VMAX is a legend. Since the 1980s, it's been the ultimate power cruiser, blending muscle bike performance with aggressive styling and raw, unfiltered speed. The last generation, with its 1679cc V4 pushing out nearly 200 horsepower, was a beast, launching harder than some sport bikes and making an unmistakable roar that turned heads everywhere. But in reality, the VMAX was never really built for long-distance comfort, and that's a deal breaker for most senior riders looking for a cruiser. While bikes like the Street Glide, Road King, and even the Rocket 3 GT offer comfortable seating, wind protection, and relaxed ergonomics, the VMAX is a different animal. It's a brutal, high-performance machine, and that makes it tiring to ride for long stretches. Another problem? It's expensive and impractical. At around $18,000, it wasn't exactly cheap, and while it had mind-blowing straight-line performance, it lacked modern touring features like cruise control, wind protection, or even a fuel-efficient range. With the small gas tank and heavy weight, it wasn't the kind of bike you want to take on a long road trip. In the end, the market for the VMAX just wasn't there anymore. Yamaha discontinued it in 2020, and whatever stock remained has been a nightmare for dealers to move. Sure, there are still die-hard fans who love what the VMAX represents, but most riders, especially older ones, have moved on to bikes that balance power with real-world usability. Now, the big question is, do these bikes deserve a chance? Well, they do, and you'll be surprised how good they are. So give them a try and tell us what you think. Make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more motorcycle content.